Hello there, welcome to today's lesson, which is going to be covering 3 of the chapters out of the book. Lesson 4.1 on reflections, 4.2 and 4.3, which are on rotations and translations. To give you kind of the broad view of what these 3 lessons have in common, they're all talking about how you can move things around in 2 dimensions. Now, if you want to talk about movement in 2 dimensions, there's really only 3 things you can talk about. So let's take a 2-dimensional object like a plane, kind of thing that we put a graph on. Okay, so if you've got this object that's a Post-it note, and you want to move it in 2 dimensions. So when I say 2 dimensions, I don't mean forward and back, right, around like that. That would be 3-dimensional movements. I want to say I'm going to move it kind of along a surface. So I'm going to give it kind of a 2-dimensional backdrop, and I'm going to say that there are 3 ways that I can move this around on this surface. I can move side to side, up and down. I can combine that, so I can move to any place on this surface. That's one type of movement. It's called a translation. I can turn my little Post-it note. Okay, so that would be a rotation. I can either turn it where it is, or I can kind of like turn it around some other point. Okay, but I can translate, I can rotate, and I can just flip it. I can flip the Post-it note over. So I can start it in one spot and I can flip it over somewhere else. And that is called a reflection. Reflections are where we're going to get started today. Okay, so let's take a look at the beginning of this. Okay, so far you've learned that when a figure is reflected in a line, each point of the pre-image and the corresponding image afterwards are the same distance from the line of reflection. So that just means if we had like some object here and the reflection line, I like to think of this as the mirror is in the middle, well then the reflection is going to be the same distance away from the mirror. That's all let's say. Okay. Reflections in a vertical line. When a figure is reflected in a vertical line that is not the y-axis, the y-coordinates of the image remain the same as the pre-image. Okay, so the y-coordinates up and down, that's the height. So we're saying that, I'm trying to do this with my hands, hopefully this works. So if this is my mirror, this is what I'm reflecting over, and I started out kind of up here and I reflect over it, well, I end up at the same height, right? I still end up at the same height. I don't end up at the same place right to left. So on the x-axis we've changed, but on the y-axis, the y-coordinates remain the same. The distance from a point in the pre-image to the line of reflection is the same as the distance from the corresponding point in the image to the line of reflection. Same thing we just said before. Those 2 images are the same distance away from that mirror. Okay, when a figure is reflected in a horizontal line that is not the x-axis, the x-coordinates of the image remain the same as the pre-image. The distance from a point in the pre-image is the same, yada, 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 still saying the same thing. So if I lay that mirror horizontally like the x-axis and I flip something from the top to the bottom, I flip it over there and I get a mirror image. Those 2 images are the same distance away from the center, from that mirror, and we are not changing the location right to left. So if my mirror was in the center, I have an object over here, well the reflection is going to be down here. Doesn't change right to left, only changes up and down. Okay, so x-axis reflections change your y-coordinate. Y-axis reflections change your x-coordinate. Okay, reflections in y equals x. Okay, so the line y equals x. So y equals x would just be like if x is 1, y is 1. X is 2, y is 2. X is 3, y is 3. So that's that 45-degree line that goes diagonal across the graph. If you have y equals x, it just goes through like that. Now, if you're reflecting over y equals x, well, if I started up here in kind of this corner, I would end up down here. So in that case, you are going to be changing both your x and y coordinates. Okay, and that's kind of the intro on reflections. So from there, we'll move on to looking at example number 1.